The feeling around the Toronto Blue Jays fan base over the last few days has been a strange mix of disappointment, acceptance, and uneasy optimism. And that emotional swing really captures where this organization stands right now. There was a genuine belief that something big was coming, that a superstar bat was finally going to land in Toronto and change the direction of the lineup in a dramatic way. When the market started to take shape and major names began to come off the board, expectations only grew stronger. The idea that this offseason could finally be the moment when the offense took a clear step forward felt real, not just hopeful thinking. And that is what made the outcome hit harder when it became clear those moves were not going to happen. When the decision around Kyle Tucker became official, and Toronto was no longer part of that conversation, it felt like the ground shifted beneath everything else. There had been so much momentum built around the possibility of him wearing a Blue Jays uniform that once it was gone, it forced a difficult realization about the rest of the roster. At that moment, it became easier to accept that Bo Bichette's time in Toronto was likely coming to an end as well, even if it was not something fans wanted to fully admit yet. The idea of losing a core player is always painful, but the fear came from losing him without truly replacing that level of production in the lineup. Seeing Bichette end up with the New York Mets brought mixed emotions. On one hand, it is never easy watching a player who meant so much to the organization put on a different uniform. On the other hand, there is a sense of relief knowing he is not staying within the American League East, where Toronto would have to face him constantly throughout the season. If the Blue Jays are going to see him again, the hope is that it happens on the biggest stage possible, because that would mean everything went right for both teams. From that perspective, it could have been far worse. Once the initial frustration settled, the conversation started to shift toward reality. This roster, even without those headline-grabbing additions, is still a good baseball team by several advanced measures. It projects as one of the stronger groups in the American League. And that matters when looking beyond the emotional side of free agency. The pitching staff, in particular, looks significantly better than it did last season. Both the bullpen and the starting rotation have added stability, depth, and upside, and that cannot be ignored when evaluating the team as a whole. The offense may not look as intimidating on paper as some hoped it would by this point in the offseason, but it remains capable and productive. There are still players in this lineup who can put together strong seasons, grind through at-bats, and score runs consistently. It might not be the upgraded attack fans dreamed of, but it is far from a weak unit. That balance between disappointment and realism is where many supporters find themselves now, trying to reconcile what could have been with what still is. A big part of the optimism comes from the growth expected within the rotation. Having a full season from Trey Savage is a major factor, especially given how promising he looked early on. There is a strong belief that his ceiling is higher than what he has shown so far, and adaptability will be the key to unlocking that potential. For a young pitcher still finding his place at the major league level, consistency and health over a full year could make a massive difference, not just for his own development, but for the stability of the entire staff. This is why it feels important to separate emotional reactions from long-term evaluation. Reacting strongly to missing out on Kyle Tucker was not just about that one player, but about what his signing represented. It was a signal that the market has reached a point where contracts are becoming increasingly extreme, both in annual value and structure. The ripple effect of those deals changes how teams approach every other decision, and Toronto was not immune to that reality. Looking at the financial side of things, it becomes easier to understand why certain lines were not crossed. These short-term, high-value contracts give players flexibility and security, while allowing them to re-enter the market again while still in their prime. From the player's perspective, it makes perfect sense, and it is hard to fault anyone for taking that path. Turning down that level of money would be nearly impossible for anyone in the same position, especially with the opportunity to chase championships at the same time. That does not make it easier for fans to accept, especially when the hope was that Toronto would finally be the team landing that kind of elite offensive talent. The fear now is that the Blue Jays lost a major bat without truly upgrading the lineup in return, and that concern is valid. The expectation heading into free agency was not just to replace production, but to elevate it. And falling short of that goal leaves unanswered questions about how far this team can go offensively. Still, it would be unfair to dismiss the work that has been done. The front office made clear efforts to address weaknesses, particularly on the pitching side. And those improvements could end up defining the season more than any single missed signing. Baseball has a way of rewarding depth, development, and balance just as much as star power. And Toronto has positioned itself well in those areas as spring training approaches. The focus will inevitably turn to how this roster comes together on the field rather than on paper. There is still curiosity about whether additional moves could be made before the season begins. But even without them, this team enters the year with a legitimate chance to compete. That reality does not erase the disappointment of what did not happen, but it does offer a reminder that success is not determined by headlines alone, and that the story of this season is far from finished. The conversation around Major League Baseball in recent weeks has not only centered on individual team moves, but also on the larger system and the influence of money in shaping competitive balance. The Dodgers, of course, are at the center of much of this debate. Their ability to consistently spend at the top level, to secure elite talent, and to create a winning environment has made them the benchmark for what a well-run, aggressive organization looks like. Yet, this dominance brings with it questions about fairness and sustainability. Fans of teams that are unable or unwilling to match that level of spending are naturally frustrated, and critics are quick to label the Dodgers as ruining baseball. But the reality is far more nuanced. This is a combination of systemic rules, differing ownership strategies, and market realities, all converging to create a landscape where a few teams have a clear advantage. The notion of the Dodgers as a monolithic villain overlooks the fact that other franchises, like the Toronto Blue Jays, the New York Yankees, and the New York Mets, are also spending heavily in order to compete. The issue is not only about who spends the most, but also about who is able to maximize their spending effectively. The Dodgers have created a model where they not only sign elite talent, but they also develop and integrate players in ways that ensure consistent performance. Investments in scouting, international acquisitions, and player development have compounded the effect of their financial muscle, making their success feel almost unstoppable. Yet, this should also be seen as a blueprint for other teams rather than a reason to criticize one organization in isolation. Part of the complexity comes from the contracts themselves and the modern market for elite players. Kyle Tucker's deal with the Dodgers, for example, was unprecedented in its structure and value, representing both the allure of immediate financial reward and the potential for long-term stability for players in their prime. These contracts provide the kind of opportunity that is difficult to ignore. Short-term, high-value deals allow for future flexibility while also rewarding current performance. And it is a model that is increasingly attractive to top-level talent. The ripple effect is clear. When one player secures such a deal, it resets expectations across the league, influencing the strategies of multiple franchises and creating cascading impacts on the rest of the free agent market. This shift has consequences for teams like Toronto, where hopes of acquiring top-tier bats collided with the realities of what other clubs were willing and able to offer. Ross Atkins and his front office have to balance ambition with prudence, knowing that overextending financially can carry significant risk. While fans may see missed opportunities as failures, from an organizational perspective, the focus is on building a sustainable roster that remains competitive over multiple seasons. That involves careful consideration of payroll, player development, and the integration of both veterans and younger talent. In other words, there is strategy behind every decision, even when it frustrates the fan base. On the field, this philosophy manifests in a team that remains balanced and capable, even if the star power did not grow as dramatically as hoped. Pitching continues to be a cornerstone, with an improved rotation and bullpen that can carry the team through stretches where offensive output may dip. Players like Trey Savage bring upside and potential to anchor the staff, and the depth added to both starting and relief pitching creates a buffer against injuries or slumps. In a season defined by the long grind, this balance can prove just as critical as acquiring marquee hitters beyond individual teams. There is a broader conversation about parity and how the league might address the disparities created by wealthier franchises. Ideas such as salary caps or luxury tax adjustments come up frequently, but the practical implementation of these measures is fraught with challenges. Generational contracts, opt-outs, and long-term commitments complicate any attempt at retroactive regulation. Furthermore, enforcing a strict cap or floor requires agreement across a wide spectrum of owners, Each with unique incentives and pressures, the debate is ongoing. And while fans often focus on immediate outcomes, the league is forced to weigh long-term stability against competitive fairness. There is also the human element that often gets lost in these discussions. Players are making decisions about their careers in a world where financial opportunity and competitive ambition intersect. Choosing between a team that can offer immediate success versus a team where a player has to help build something over time is intensely personal. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., for example, represents a type of player who is invested in long-term growth and legacy, whereas others are motivated by the combination of a championship window and financial reward. Both approaches are valid, yet both feed into the broader narrative of how teams succeed or fail in the modern MLB environment. Critics of spending patterns often overlook how teams like the Dodgers leverage both strategy and luck, international signings, draft choices, and risk-taking on potential stars all play a part in constructing a roster that is not just expensive, but effective. The ability to scout, evaluate, and project player performance separates an elite organization from merely a wealthy one. Money alone does not guarantee success, but when combined with strong decision-making, it magnifies results. The contrast between organizations that invest thoughtfully and those that are hesitant or constrained by budget creates the visible gap that fuels discussions of fairness. Despite all this, optimism remains for teams like Toronto, even in a season where headline acquisitions do not materialize. The combination of depth, improved pitching, and offensive capability ensures that the Blue Jays are still positioned to compete. Fans may need time to adjust expectations, but the underlying foundation of the team is solid. The goal is not only to chase immediate glory, but to construct a roster that can sustain success over several seasons, balancing both potential and production. This approach may not always deliver instant gratification, but it offers stability and the chance to build a legacy rather than relying on one-off signings. Ultimately, the current landscape of Major League Baseball reflects a mix of systemic rules, financial power, and strategic decision-making. Teams that spend are not inherently ruining the sport. They are taking advantage of opportunities available to them. The challenge for the league is to ensure that those opportunities exist broadly enough that multiple franchises can remain competitive. Without that balance, the perception of dominance can feel overwhelming, even if it is the result of skillful management rather than unfair practices. As the season approaches, the narrative will continue to evolve, with every signing, every trade, and every game contributing to the story of how a team like Toronto navigates the complexities of modern baseball and positions itself for success. But before we move forward, don't forget to join our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest news about the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the news, so drop a comment below. In what could be one of the most shocking moves of the offseason, whispers around the league suggest that Juan Soto, the young superstar outfielder known for his prodigious bat and fearless plate presence, may be leaving the Yankees for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Sources close to the situation hint at a staggering 4-year deal that could send shockwaves across Major League Baseball, altering the balance of power in both leagues. Soto, who has already made a name for himself as one of the premier hitters in the game, reportedly grew frustrated with the Yankees' handling of their roster and their inability to surround him with the offensive support expected of a player of his caliber. His time in New York, though marked by moments of brilliance, seems to have reached a crossroads, with insiders suggesting that the Dodgers' winning culture and star-studded lineup proved too enticing to resist. The Dodgers, known for their aggressive pursuit of elite talent, have long been rumored to be in the market for a marquee bat, and Soto fits that mold perfectly. A 4-year commitment would give Los Angeles not only a marquee face of the franchise, but also a potential cornerstone for a team aiming for a deep postseason run. While the financial terms are still murky, some analysts speculate that the deal could be among the most lucrative in recent memory for a player still in the prime of his career. League insiders note that this move, if finalized, could fundamentally reshape the National League West. Soto's blend of power, discipline, and youthful energy would slot seamlessly into the Dodgers lineup, creating yet another nightmare matchup for opposing pitchers. Meanwhile, the Yankees would be left scrambling, forced to reckon with the sudden loss of one of their brightest stars and the potential ripple effects on both fan morale and clubhouse chemistry. As with all high-profile MLB rumors, There are layers of uncertainty. Soto's camp has remained tight-lipped, and neither organization has issued official statements yet. The speculation alone is enough to dominate sports chatter, fuel debates on social media, and ignite the imaginations of fans from coast to coast. Should the Dodgers secure Soto's signature, it would not only be a bold statement of intent, but a seismic moment in modern baseball, one that will be dissected and debated for months to come. Whether the deal materializes or remains just a tantalizing what-if, one thing is clear: the baseball world is watching, and Juan Soto's next move could define a new era of superstar movement in the sport. That's all for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay up to date with exclusive news about the Los Angeles Dodgers, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We always appreciate your comments and feedback. See you in the next video.